Bookends by Andrew Harrison. Rydalmere 2116. Narrated by Chloe Schwank. His mother used to tease him, half chiding, "Duncan Macpherson, I swear you're the original bookworm." Lying on the floor, chin propped in hand, feet describing idle arcs in the air, Duncan heard nothing. So engrossed was he in the book in front of him, Biggles in Australia, by Captain W.E. Johns. Biggles and Ginger on board their amphibious aircraft, fighting off giant squid in a tropical lagoon. No matter that the premise was somewhat far-fetched, this was the life. When Duncan's mother delivered him into the world, they were nicer times. Times that fitted like a well-worn jumper, warm and soft, probably brown and smelling of mothballs. Comfortable, unpretentious, simple times. Next-door neighbour old Mrs. Kirkcaldy presented the newly arrived boy-child with a tiny hardback copy of Patience Powell's Squeak the Mouse. This is a Pico book, inside the front cover. Although neither Mrs. Kirkcaldy nor the baby knew it, that gift was the start of an epic journey through words, pages, chapters, visiting worlds real and imagined, meeting characters virtuous and vile, living vicariously through the conjuring craft of the writer. Patience Powell could never have imagined the number of times her quaint little picture book would be read once the boy grew from listening and looking to sounding out words for himself, then to really reading, in the full immersive sense of the word. Duncan's father was an electrical artificer in the Royal Australian Navy. He was a lot of other things too, but most men of the time described themselves by what they did, not who they were. The boy felt a tinge of guilty relief when his father was away at sea, because the nagging about playing football went to sea as well, and the reading could continue uninterrupted. His mother worried a little that Duncan wasn't very social. She had no idea the number of friends he had, hidden in the pages of his books. Duncan was forlornly an only child. As he understood it, he was somehow to be pitied for his lack of siblings, and that only child was an explanation for a certain type of person and way of behaving. Over the years, the boy would wonder if it was somehow his fault his parents had decided one child was enough. But of course, he knew nothing yet of mortgage repayments and endometriosis. Duncan's mother, like many mothers, found the separation from her son during the early years of school painful and anxious. She imagined terrible accidents and bullies and embarrassing situations, and wanted so much to protect her child from harm. However, the worst Duncan encountered ranged from being ordered to stand in the girls' line before assembly, for talking, drinking foil-capped bottles of lumpy, lukewarm milk in the playground, and worrying about finding his play lunch in the communal storage box. Those trials and the smell of gluing pictures with Perkins paste would live with him forever, as would the dry, woody feel of coloured Cuisenaire rods for learning maths. It was when his teacher introduced the class to SRA cards that she really got Duncan's attention. Numbered reading cards in colour-coded levels with comprehension tests and a student workbook. It was intended as an early manifestation of individualized learning. In fact, it also became an early manifestation of competitiveness and academic elitism. Although the student could work at their own pace, each was well aware of the level the rest of the class had reached. Duncan thrived and worked through the colour levels from yellow to black until there were no more SRA cards to read. So, then it was on to Enid Blyton's Famous Five and Secret Seven, BB's Bill Badger series, more Biggles, the Willard Price adventure books, The Tunnel and the Wooden Horse by Eric Williams, MC. A smorgasbord of stories for an insatiable appetite and imagination. Many thousands of books later, some 70 years in fact, retired librarian Duncan Macpherson was feeling somewhat diminished. The progress of the world from microfiche to Microsoft, from World Book Encyclopedia to the world of Google, from hardbacks and paperbacks to Kindle and Audible and tablets. Yes, somewhat diminished was the right phrase. Progress was tiring. After Molly passed away and he had his fall, it was logical and somewhat inevitable that Duncan would find himself in an aged care facility. That it was brutally named Twilight Village gave him a good dose of indignation. So did most things these days. It was difficult, emasculating almost, leaving the house, downsizing, parting with an accumulated lifetime of stuff, each with its own associated memories. And the books. "One bookcase, that's all we'll allow," the facility manager had instructed. "No cluttering for safety and psychological health, and they only collect dust anyway." Thus began the process of selection. If your ship was sinking and you could only save a dozen people in the life raft, who would you take? And how do you choose who you abandon? Duncan's electric recliner was his one concession to those years of progress. The rest of his remaining possessions were flotsam and jetsam and spindrift on the shore of the castaway island that was his room, except the books. From his recliner, he could read the spine of every book that had made the life raft, crammed tightly into the shelves of his one permitted bookcase. A bottle of whiskey, purely medicinal, was secreted behind the books on the second top shelf, guarded by Jack McLaren's My Crowded Solitude and Tom Neal's An Island to Oneself, and the Patience Powell Pica book, his very first. The castaway smiled to himself. He rather enjoyed the solitude of this particular island. Maybe Patience had nailed it right from the start. Once upon a time, a saucy little mouse called Squeak lived in the toe of an old boot at the bottom of a well. No matter that the premise was somewhat far-fetched, this was the life. The end.